I'm Pope Van Cleef. I'm with Bogert Energy Partners here in Oklahoma City. We are primarily focused on mineral acquisitions throughout the scoop, stack, and merge. A little bit more background. We're sort of a spin-off of a company who's been an operator for, 40 or so years. Bogo Energy Corp. Before that, Bogert Oil. So we do have quite a few resources at our disposal that have also been a big help. So about me personally, and I'll say that there is a point to the next several slides. I am not an oil and gas guy. My background is in marketing. I have been in marketing for the last 8 years, roughly. So just know that on the front end. So for the last 8 years, I've made a living doing things like building awesome marketing plans for people. So you can see my fancy little marketing plan right here, and then I dealt with this guy a lot. He was confused and super happy with all the good work that we did for him. I would make sweet websites for people. You can see here, this is outstanding work. This I actually did do. I used to take pictures of food. So, and I remember when I was taking this picture, like right there, and I was just like, what in the hell have I done with my life? But no, I really did love it. And this is a great company, Oklahoma company, Schwab Meat. So why does any of this matter? And I think the most important point that I am going to make today is that Oseberg is an extremely powerful learning and teaching tool, especially for people who are relatively new to the industry. And I think that would probably hold true kind of in any aspect of this industry, but especially for mineral buying like we do. So on a daily basis, we're answering questions like, the obvious ones. Who has what where? Who is doing what where? Is this a good area? Where are things moving? Is it oil or gas? How much oil or gas? It goes on and on and on. And I think that it's really easy to take for granted just how quickly and how easily we're able to compile and act on the amount of data that we are. It is a total game changer. So the moral for me on this is, if you're in a position to put this product in an employee's hand, even if it's a contract guy, just put it in people's hands, because you don't know what results it will yield. It has literally transformed our business. And then on a side note down here, you might not be able to see it, I also find it somewhat frustrating if I'm discussing acreage with another company and it's like really clear that they're not using Oseberg. It's like we're comparing apples and oranges. So yeah, more people should get the product. So now I'll move into just a basic workflow. So call this identifying horizontal PDP with potential upside in bulk. And that's just using Oseberg Oklahoma production data. And in layman's terms, just looking for areas that might get increased densities. So I like to, before I get into using Oseberg, I always like to start with a logical question. Like I said, there is so much data, it can be easy to get out into the weeds. And so for me, it's better to start and ask, what do I really want to see? And in this case, what type of well do I want to see? So if we're looking for horizontal PDP with upside, we don't just need older horizontal wells. We don't just need older, preferably high quality horizontal wells. We want older, high quality horizontal wells that don't yet have an increased density filed in that section or unit. So step one is just go in, pick your AOI. This was completely arbitrary. You can use it wherever you want to. This is, I think I've got Eastern Kingfisher, basically. So the first thing I'll start off with is just mapping all of the production in a given area. As you can see, it's not super helpful at this point. I mean, you can go through and you can click on each of those individual wells, but there again, there's just a lot to work with, so you can start refining. So I again, arbitrarily chose. I just want to look at wells. You can call this older if you want, but I'm just looking at wells that were drilled in 2016, whose first production was reported in 2016. So down here, I don't know how many of you guys use this as opposed to using the little filter things up here, but this area down here is really fun. You can do some pretty good conditional statements. In this case, I just said whose first production date was later than or equal to January 1st of 2016, and then also whose first production date is earlier than or equal to January 1st, 2017. You could also just do contains 2016 if you want, but I just did this to show that you can bring in some pretty interesting logic down in these filter commands. So there are the mapped wells that reported first production in 2016. So now we're dealing with a smaller sample, a lot easier to start wrapping your mind around. But remember, we need to have what are the good wells that came online in 2016. To me, that is likely an indicator that they're going to go back in that initial performance. So now we're going to look for good 2016 wells. And in this case, I've added 2 more parameters. So to me, in that time frame, I've used the cumulative oil is greater than 150,000 barrels. If you're further west, you might also include gas if you want to. But I'm also interested in, just for continued revenue and royalty right now, the last reported month is greater than 3,000 barrels. So a well that has performed very strongly over its life, but is also still doing, for the amount of time that it's been online, pretty darn good. So as you can see, it drastically thins out the crowd. So at this point, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wells that meet those criteria. Again, if you start lowering that cumulative, you're going to see a lot more wells that are remaining. If you lower the last reported month of production or average, however you want to do it, you'll see more wells that fill this. So, and also I'll say, if you go further that way on your AOI, you'll start to see quite a few more that meet these criteria. So now the next step, again, is we want to see which wells don't have an increased density yet. So you can just visually do this. You're not dealing with that many wells. At this point, you can kind of kick it into manually looking at things. But go ahead and overlay your increased density. I took the time frame up to the last 3 years, just so I'm not missing anything. At that point, you can start to see, hey, which of these wells have already gotten their increased density. In this case, there are still a handful. So got one up there, one right there, a couple down here. So, and again, if you move further back to the west in the AOI, you're going to see a lot more of the wells that meet these criteria. They're going to have already received an increased density. So then from there, you can just go in and start to look at them manually. The idea is not to do manual work, but at the end of the day, I think it's really important to add that final touch in just to verify that, hey, is this what I really want to look at? So in this case, I chose one that is probably questionable, but it's an OEA well. It looks like in section 12 of 17.5. The Clark unit, I think is what it's called. So it looks like it's produced somewhere around 150,000 barrels. It's obviously still doing, and I think it was like 3,500 barrels per month. After it looks like they might have done a rework or something on it right there in that time frame. So again, you always want to step back after you've gone through a workflow like this and start asking the logical questions. So in this case, is this a freak well for the operator or the area? Is it an outlier, basically? Are there other solid wells in the same area, OEA or competitor wells? How active is the operator? I think in this case, it's fair to ask, what is the overall corporate health of the operator? I have seen OEA file increased densities, I think 2 or 3 in the last maybe 45 days. So, hey, maybe they'll do it. So that brings us to that final question. And my final answer to that is maybe. At least it still has decent production. So, all right, that's it, guys. Do I do questions or anything like that?
We got one question. Somebody asked if you've seen a difference in the production since the new production data has come out. If you've noticed any improvements, or if it's better or worse, or any difference at all. Yes.
Yes, for sure. We previously used IHS data, and when Oseberg makes a claim, respectfully, that their data is going to be a lot better, I trust but verify. And so we kept IHS on for probably 3 or 4 months, and just again and again and again, we would look into the data and see that Oseberg was, in some cases, maybe just a month ahead, which is, that's a big deal. But in other cases, 4, 5, 6 months ahead. So, to answer your question, I have seen it's way better. That's what I've seen. So.
I'm a product manager for Oseberg, so it's a completely self-serving question, but
Okay.
Did you ever look at the increased density order numbers that are part of the production data set?
I have, yeah, and when I looked at those, it looked like it wasn't adding up.
Okay.
Part of it for me also is just that visual aspect, just being able to see, hey, is there an increased density?
Cool.
Even still, if I identify a well using this or other workflows, I'm going to go and I'm going to look in other places to verify everything that I've seen. In that particular case, I think that could probably use a couple more steps. Like if it has had an increased density, how many wells? To me, it'd be good to, if you could, for example, do joins across data sets from increased densities in the production data, that might be one way to accomplish that.